Hello and welcome to the Keep Right On podcast. I'm Alex Dicken, and as ever, I'm joined by my co-host Brian Dick. And today we have the Norwich City reporter Connor Southwell of the Pinkham, the Eastern Daily Press and the Norwich Evening News joining us briefly to talk about the big game on Saturday at St Andrews. It's a far bigger game for Birmingham City than it is for Norwich City. But yeah, just going to quickly lay the table. Going to start by saying that obviously Blues have to win the game effectively, and if they win, they have to hope that Plymouth fail to beat Hull, or Sheffield Wednesday lose to Sunderland, or Blackburn lose to Leicester. A point would only be enough for Blues if Plymouth lose at home to Hull City by 5 goals, and given the Pilgrims' record at home part this season, that's probably quite unlikely. So, Connor, we've got you here, we've got you on the podcast today, and we're hoping that you're going to tell us that Norwich City are going to rest loads of players and let Blues win on Saturday. Is that correct? Is that how it's going to play out?
Do you know what? I'd love to come on here and be able to tell you that, but I'm not sure. Mainly because Norwich have got quite a thin squad as it is anyway. But equally, I think it's not technically mathematically done. I mean, you painted it out there. I mean, Norwich's situation is that they're 3 points ahead of Hull. It would need an 8-goal swing. They're 7 goals better off, but they've also scored more goals. So Hull would, it would essentially need an 8-goal swing for it to happen. So whilst it shouldn't happen, it could happen. So it's kind of a difficult situation that they're in. So I don't think they'll be in the position maybe that David Wagner was with Huddersfield last time he came to St Andrews in that season and was it rested 10 players or something like that. I'm not quite sure it'll be on those levels, but it wouldn't surprise me to see maybe some areas of rotation for this game, if I'm honest.
What have Norwich been like this season? Because I remember we watched them in September and they pretty eased past Blues that day 2-0. I'm looking at some of the stats around it, and they are the only team in the top 6 that averages under 50% possession. I've been quite surprised and also impressed by the set piece statistic this season. They've scored 18 set piece goals, only Cardiff and Ipswich have more. Are they a little bit different to Norwich teams in years gone by that have kind of won the league playing attractive swashbuckling style of football?
Yeah, definitely different, and they're definitely more comfortable without the ball, which is something that I think as a club they've tried to do since they came down from since they came down from the Premier League last time, and there was this realisation that almost as Burnley is seeing at the moment, if you go up to the Premier League and try and play a pretty attractive, maybe idealistic style of football, that it hasn't quite worked out for them with Daniel Farke on 2 occasions, then obviously Dean Smith latterly in the second year. So I think there has been a little bit of reinvention that hasn't necessarily gone down particularly well, and it's been a very topsy-turvy season, to be honest. I mean, as late as February, David Wagner was getting chance if you don't know what you're doing after making a substitution, and that relationship hasn't been the best, really. But it's difficult to argue with the job that he's done and the position that Norwich have worked themselves into. You mentioned set pieces. They're really quite conventional, I think, and maybe that's why they've done so well, because they're happy to go to places and not have as much of the ball and maybe not be so wedded to a philosophical way of playing. So, yeah, it's been a really interesting year. It's felt about 4 seasons in one, so goodness knows how you guys feel. But yeah, it should now, hopefully, barring an absolute disaster on the final day, it should be playoff football now.
4 seasons. We've had 6 managers, so we've had 6 seasons. Connor, am I right in thinking that Gabriel Sara is the man that glues it all together?
Yeah, he's got 25 goal contributions. It's been an incredible season for him. He's one of those players I think that's been capable of producing a moment from very little, as maybe we saw last weekend with a shot from range. So, just a brilliant all-round player. And I think what's made him more impressive is the fact he's done it from a multitude of positions. He's had to play long periods of the season in sort of a deeper midfield role, and he went, by his standards, a 13-game run without scoring a goal or registering an assist, which was described as a little bit of a dip for him. He's done it sort of wide right. He's done it in a number 10 role as well. So just a very football intelligent player, a very good player to watch. And I think maybe what's impressed David Wagner more than anything else is his selflessness, his team first attitude. So yeah, brilliant player. And if Norwich get there or if they don't, he's Premier League bound for me.
Connor, that's the good from a Norwich point of view. Give us the bad and give us some hope for Birmingham City. Where can Blues get at Norwich?
Yeah, well, they're a team that do and have all season given up really good opportunities to their opponents. They've been fortunate maybe in regard to having in my view, one of the best goalkeepers in the Championship in Angus Gunn, who has saved their bacon on numerous occasions. So they're definitely there to be got at. The way that they play, I think, is quite unique. They commit the fullbacks high, so there's definitely space in between or in behind fullbacks to go and attack. And yeah, I think there can be, because we've spoken about it, the way that they play, there can be a clunkiness to it. And when they do have off days, they can be really bad days. They went to Plymouth and lost 6-2. Their away form generally this season, they've only won 6 times on the road, has been really, really poor. They've struggled, particularly against teams who are struggling. So yeah, I would say that this is a very different prospect to playing Norwich City at Carrow Road. They're a very different team away from home, and that I think should give people hope, because there is definitely opportunities to get at Norwich, and they will give away opportunities. So then it comes down to how clinical you are as a team, and if you are, then there's definitely a chance of getting something against Norwich.
Connor, just lastly before we let you go, I'm aware we're probably recording this before press conference has taken place. What are the injury news? Is there anyone likely to be missing the Blues game?
Yeah, as we say, we're recording this before David Wagner's doing it a little bit later today. Ashley Barnes is the big one. He similar sort of 2 issues. He dropped out of the starting 11 last week with a little bit of an Achilles issue that they've been managing, and came on for 15 minutes, didn't touch the ball, then pulled up with a calf issue and went off. So I think there's a little bit of doubt surrounding him. They've been managing John Rowe and his fitness over the last few weeks, basically trying to gradually build it back up. Whether this would be an opportunity to maybe give him some minutes out of a playoff campaign probably remains to be seen. But barring that, I think it's pretty good. I mean, left back Dimi Yanulis, who's been out, is set to return for this one, or is certainly going to return to training. Whether or not he's sort of capable enough to start or not, I'm not sure. They've welcomed Grant Hanley back in recent weeks. He's kind of dipped out, not an injury as such, but he's come back from a major injury, and they threw him back in, and he just looked a little bit off it. So they've kind of dipped him back out on an individual program. But barring that, I'd probably expect a fully fit Norwich squad. Onel Hernandez, obviously a name that you guys know well. He's missing the rest of the season because he's broken his foot. So beyond that, I think Norwich are in a pretty good place ahead of this weekend.
Connor, can I just ask the question that's been burning most for me as a regular visitor to Carrow Road? Can I just ask you, how much banana cake before the match is too much?
It's a question that I ask myself most weeks, to be honest. I think if you get to a stage where you're bloated by it, I think that's probably enough. But it's I don't know what they put in it. It's incredible. It is incredible.
Morphine, potentially. It's
quite possible. We need it at Carrow Road, I can tell you that.
There you go. All the big issues covered here on the Keep Right On podcast. Alex, are we done with Connor?
I think we are. We can let him get off before we start being miserable about Birmingham City as usual.
Cheers, gents. Thank you. See you soon.
Thanks very much, Connor. Are we encouraged by what Connor was saying there, or discouraged?
Can we talk about banana cake?
Well, no, that won't make a podcast, Brian.
No, okay. I'm slightly encouraged, actually. He did suggest that there would be some changes, albeit not wholesale, not the 10 that Wagner instigated when he was a Huddersfield manager those years ago. He's confirmed what I thought, actually, about that there is a possibility to get at Norwich. Now, for me, we'll come on to this, no doubt, and say this 1,000 times. The first goal is all important on Saturday, and if Blues can get that and Norwich are liable to give that up, then I think potentially, it does become a very different game for Blues. So, yeah, then they're not rampant. They're not the Norwich side that have swept Blues away before. I do think it's about Blues, isn't it? It's about how they come out, and do they come out rip snorting and snapping into tackles and with a real desperate desire to win the game, or are they overawed by the occasion? But yeah, Norwich Connor didn't make Norwich sound unbeatable to me, and I take comfort from that.
No, I was looking the other day, and Norwich have won 9 of their last 10 games against Blues. But at the same time, as you say, it's not that Norwich team that was under Alex Neil. It's not the one that was under Daniel Farker, where they were sweeping all before them in the Championship. Their away record this season, as Connor alluded to earlier, is pretty average, or pretty poor, actually. They're 19th out of 24 teams in the league in terms of away record. They've got a fair few more points than Blues, obviously, because Blues are wretched on the road. But they're no great shakes away from Carrow Road. So I think there's hope. Brian, what are we thinking about team selection? We both picked teams. We've both gone for slightly different things. You've actually got a rogue selection there.
Which one's the rogue selection?
Well, it's not a rogue selection. I think it's a rogue selection on the last 5 weeks where this player has not played at all. Then again, I've got a player and he's not played at all as well.
Right. Okay.
You've got two in.
Okay. I'll do mine. Shall I?
Yeah.
I've gone for a 4-2-3-1 because I think they have to. Ruddy in goal, a back four of Drame, Mark Roberts, Dion Sanderson, and Lee Buchanan. I assume you're referring to Drame as the rogue selection there.
Yeah.
The two pivots is Bielik and Sunjic, and Keshi Anderson, Jay Stansfield as the 10, Sariq and Dembele on the left, and Lucas Djukovic up front. Let's ride the Duke for as long as he can give us, in my view.
I hadn't seen him there, Brian. I completely missed Djukovic. That was something I was thinking about at the start of the week. I could probably get on board with it, actually. I'm not sure he's going to have a start in him at this stage, to be fair.
No, I accept that. It's an absolute roll of the dice. But if it's 40 minutes, then if he can get the goal that puts Blues 1 up, or if you can give Blues the leadership or the experience or the know-how of these situations that they're going to need in the first half, then I think it's worth flogging the poor old warhorse. To be honest, I really do. We get Stansfield on the pitch as well as the 10, which I think he can be pretty effective as coming from slightly deeper. Drame is obviously the absolute wild card. I know what you mean, and this isn't to slate Ethan Laird, but I believe Drame to be a more reliable defender, albeit the last time he played, he was responsible for a horrendous back post goal, wasn't he? So, I just think Drame is a bit more physical. I think he's more of a physical defender. And also, he's actually contributed more over the piece going forward than Laird has.
It's a weird. Sorry, Brian. It's a weird debate, isn't it? I think between those two, because we look at them both, and they're both probably first team right backs, aren't they? Both have an argument to play. And you just said that Drame is the better defender, and but statistically, I think this season Laird, when Laird has played, Blues have been better defensive. They've kept more clean sheets and they've won more games. And we look at Laird and say he's an excellent attacking fullback, but Drame has actually contributed 5 assists, whereas Laird's only contributed 1. So it's kind of roles reversed as to what we thought they were going to be.
Yeah, I'm not sure that you could say that Blues have contributed, have had more clean sheets when Laird's in the side. Therefore, Laird is a better defender. The chances are that the Blues probably defend differently when Laird's in the side. He at the start of the season, certainly his role was to get into midfield a little bit, wasn't it? And Blues defend with a back three. So it's not a simple correlation, but I suppose it is a stat that matters.
Mine's not dissimilar to yours, my team. So I've gone Ruddy in goal, Laird right back, Mark Roberts, Dion Sanderson, and Lee Buchanan as the back four. A midfield pivot 2 of Bielik and Sunjic, Miyoshi, Bakuna, and Dembele behind Jay Stansfield. I've gone with the back four with Roberts, as you have as well, just because the set piece aspect again with Norwich being right up there in terms of set piece goals. I thought he's probably I half expect him to start at Huddersfield. I think he's definitely going to be in contention for this one. It's just whether Rowett decides to move Bielik, because Bielik's been so successful, I suppose, at centre back, and the Blues results have been better with him there. I really like the idea of the Bielik-Sunjic axis that we haven't seen since John Eustace days, really. I've been surprised Gary Rowett hasn't used that. Are you?
Yeah, I have, absolutely. Given that he came on our podcast in, was it October, and identified that as the real strength of the Blues team, that relationship between Sunjic and Bielik. And I think I've chosen it with Gabriel Sara in mind, actually. The prospect of him being given too much space, just 25 yards from Blues goal, I think that really is a route to disappointment. I really do. And if Blues can fill those holes that that he tends to flourish in. I'm thinking not necessarily Sunjic snapping at his heels. I'm thinking more Bielik, being alert to where the space is and reading the game and snuffing things out in the way he can. So yeah, that's my reasoning. It's a slightly negative selection maybe from the point of view of we're responding to what Norwich might do, but that's where we are.
It's partly my reasoning, but also I like the idea of that midfield too, because if you want to play Miyoshi, Bakuna, Dembele and Stansfield in front, it just gives those players more license, and you don't want Bakuna and Dembele to have too much defensive responsibility, particularly Dembele. That worked so well at the start of the season with Buchanan as a left back playing very orthodox and playing more reserved, and Sunjic just covering those spaces on the left hand side when Dembele would go forward and inevitably not track back in the way other wingers would. I think, Brian, we have to see Dembele, don't we? Surely.
I think so, but I've been feeling that for a few weeks now, haven't you?
Yeah. I agree. I think he's getting closer. He's getting higher up the pecking order. I think he's winning game right over. It's just whether it has come too late. I mean, Rout's constantly stressed that he wants to pick players that he trusts, and it's quite obvious that he hasn't trusted Dembele over this period of games. Is he going to? I suppose going into the last game of the season, we've reached a point where Blues have to win. It's not necessarily about the players that Gary Rout trusts anymore to pick up points and track back and do things. It's about the players that are capable of winning matches and unlocking teams, and Dembele is probably more that than most of us in this Blues team.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the Norwich side. Obviously, if you do pick Dembele, for the attacking quality that he can bring, the prospect of him not tracking Jack Stacey back into his own box and conceding a goal, that's the downside of that, isn't it? And if Dembele's in the side, then it's going to be really incumbent not only upon Buchanan but upon the left side of the double pivot to really tuck in and support those, block off those areas as well. But Dembele, for me, has to be a risk worth taking, and I agree it's a risk. And then if he leaves the back door open and Blues concede the first goal, then it's a failed gamble, isn't it? But we have to be, you need 3 points, don't we, at the end of the day? And to get 3 points, you need to score goals.
Yeah. I'm just going to run through my 11 again, and then Brian, you run through yours, and all the people listening can tell us in the comment section, who's right and whether we're both wrong. We're probably both wrong.
You're definitely wrong, yeah, but you do yours.
I'm not the one who's starting Lucas Djukovic in front on the strength of 15 minutes. To be fair, you're also doing it on the strength of 7 years of relegation battles, and he is more equipped than most. Ruddy in goal for me, right back Laird, Mark Roberts, Sanderson, Buchanan make up the back four, Bielik and Sunjic midfield axis, Miyoshi, Bakuna and Dembele behind Stansfield.
Yeah, so I've gone Ruddy in goal, Drame as the right back, Roberts, Sanderson, Buchanan like Alex, then Bielik and Sunjic like Alex, then the attacking three, Anderson, Stansfield and Dembele. Stansfield was the 10, with Djukovic up front for as long as he can last.
What an effort he's made, by the way, to shake off a knee injury that probably looked like it was ending his season, and to feature against Huddersfield last year. And I presume he's going to be involved against Norwich. So, kudos to him. And you probably wouldn't expect anything less, would you?
And I wouldn't. And then to agree to do the post-match interview.
Yeah.
I'm not going to criticise anybody for their selection of putting Lucas up, and I'm not going to, because it was choosing the player to speak at the end of that game would have been a really, really, really difficult decision. But fair play to Duke for coming out and doing that. We got tons of questions, Alex. Absolutely tons, and we've got maybe well over 10, maybe a dozen here, and that was within about 10 minutes of putting up the push for questions as well. So should we get to them now? We've got first one is from Popcorn Haribo. Whatever happens on Saturday, win, lose or draw, can we expect more consistency next season? My immediate and slightly facetious response to that is they've been quite consistent this season. But I know that's not what Popcorn is asking about. I think what's been most troubling has been the inconsistency, not of results, but the inconsistency in performance levels, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think that's probably down to the fact we've had 6 managers, if you include the interims. We can't get away from that. It's going to be, I think there was a statistic we were talking about in the press room before the Huddersfield game, hoping for another away win at that time, and still Blues have 3 away wins. They've had, twice as many managers as away wins this season, which is absolutely ridiculous. I think we can expect more consistency next season, to answer the question in short, because there has to be. You can't go through another season where you've got 6 managers, 6 different ideas coming across to the players. If there's one thing in the summer, obviously we don't know what's going to happen with the managerial situation. It is very much up in the air at the moment. I just hope that there's a manager in place for the start of the season, and that manager is given a long time to kind of get ideas and messages across to the players. A group of players that are probably going to be, a lot of them are going to be new players. And given time, whatever league Blues are in, I don't think there's going to be an immediate quick fix, even if it's League One. I don't think Blues are going to be, well clear at the top of the league, because the turnaround of play is going to have to be quite big. From what I understand, if they were to go down to League One, the budget would still be very good. It would still be better than most League One clubs, or if not all League One clubs, including those going down from the Championship as well, Huddersfield and Rotherham. So I think they're in a good place if that does happen. But the consistency, firstly, has to come from those at the top of the club in the decisions they make. And this season has been partly their fault with the first one, but after that, there's been obviously the illness to Mowbray nobody could have foreseen. It's been very kind of erratic in the decisions that have been made and what's happened. So I'm hoping for some consistency. I think we all need it at this stage. I do think it will come.
It would just be nice to have a period of 2 or 3 seasons in Birmingham City's history where the same guy is in the manager's office. That's the last person to do that was Gary Rowett. And yeah, things started to break apart then. Let's not go into a history lesson. Interesting question here from Danny Martin. Why do you believe there's been such a lack of energy and urgency? I wonder if those are the same things. In the last 2 performances, considering where we are in the league. They've played in front of sold-out away ends all season and returned 3 wins and 19 goals. I mean, that is a abysmal statistic. The 3 wins is bad, but the 19 goals, I hadn't actually twigged it was that bad. I can't get my head around it, says Danny. And I'm also struggling to get my head around. I'm actually blown away now. I'm thinking about that statistic of 19 goals. Why do you believe there's been such a lack of energy and urgency, Alex? And are they the same thing?
Yeah, I think there's been 40 odd goals conceded as well. I think 40 plus. So that's another damning statistic. The energy and urgency, I think they probably are the same thing. Definitely urgency. In the last, I think 3 of the last 4 games, you look at the Cardiff game, the Rotherham game, and the Huddersfield game, it just really wasn't there. They don't. I said this after the Huddersfield game. They don't play like a team that is on the verge of losing its championship status a lot of the time. It's very kind of, I suppose they have to be measured. They can't be rushed. They probably, they have to work their way through the thirds a lot of the time because they haven't had that focal point to lump the ball to. But there's no real urgency when they play out from the back. I really rate Christian Bielik. Him and Dion Sanderson at times in the Rotherham game, they were just kind of rolling it about to each other at the back, and I was thinking, you need to get the ball forward. There's only, there's minutes on the clock here, and Blues really needed to win that game. They needed to win the Cardiff game. They needed to win the Huddersfield game as well. And it's just been, there hasn't. I completely agree with this from Danny, because there hasn't been enough urgency in those games to get up the field. I understand they haven't been able to go as direct as they perhaps would have wanted under Rowett. But, there's got to be kind of an urgency to get the ball down the flanks and get crosses in, get fullbacks overlapping. And there just hasn't been. I don't know what the reason is. I ask Gary Rowett about this probably on a weekly basis. And I think, he alluded to it with the away form being perhaps a mentality issue. Of not being able to kind of, I suppose, deal with the crowd being against them, whereas at home in front of the pack, St Andrews obviously all for them. But I don't know. You know, it's clearly a big issue because the away form compared to the home form this season has been ridiculously bad.
Yeah, the one game of the ones you've listed there that really stands out is the Coventry game, isn't it? And yes, obviously that was a home match, but there was a real edge to the crowd that day, wasn't there? Mm-hmm. And there was a bit of jeopardy. To be fair, you know, Blues didn't start totally dominant and dominate the 90 minutes. You know, it could have gone either way in the first quarter. But scoring the first goal at home, they do seem to be a vastly different side to the one that seems nervous away from home and doesn't seem to be able to self-start. The point you make about Bielik is an interesting one, because do you remember in Mowbray's first game, I think the Swansea game, Bielik was playing in the pivot rather than as a centre-back. And he'd take 2 or 3 touches and he'd do a 360 and he'd slow the ball down. And Tony Mowbray was pulling his hair out, wasn't he? With the lack of speed and tempo with which Bielik moved the ball. So, yeah, I think that's potentially not something that Bielik does particularly well. I don't think he is a fast distributor, albeit, I will say he does have other qualities, and he's certainly not the villain of the piece, particularly, I don't think, in where the team is now. But yeah, the moving the ball quickly has been an issue all season.
It wasn't just Bielik. It was Sanderson as well. To be fair, I think he's been playing out very slowly in the last 2 games, especially. So there just needs to be more tempo to the way they're playing. They need to kind of realise the position they're in. You know,
there's a fear of giving it away, though, isn't it? If you rush a pass or make a quick decision, you then, if you give it away, then fear sets in, doesn't it?
Well, unless you're Janino Bacuna and you are walking back towards your own 18-yard box against Huddersfield, trying to take players on. There was one instance in the second half when he did it, and I was just like, "Oh my god!" I think, and he didn't last much longer on the pitch after that. But I get that point as well. And there obviously is that great fear with a lot of the players, because they've, in the last 2 games, I suppose, we look at it and say they've got to win, but also in their eyes they just can't lose those games because they've got to kind of keep themselves in with a shout. But it's all been leading up to this game against Norwich. If they don't win this one, they are going to get relegated. So maybe we'll see them. Well, we have to see them playing with that urgency. They can't, they can't wait until the 75th minute to start playing. They've got to play from the very first minute.
There are no more tomorrows left, absolutely. Danny, that is a great question. And I think, with the help of a sports psychologist and a master tactician, we could have spent an entire podcast on that question. So thank you for that. At BCFC Statistics, this is the one I'm dreading. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being not very confident and 10 being confident, how confident are you of Blues surviving on Saturday? Alex, I'm going to shamelessly duck that one. Well, I will give my answer, but you can have first go.
I'm amazed at, and I've been kind of canvassing opinion on social media and speaking to Blues fans. There's such confidence that Blues will win this game on Saturday. And I think it just stems from the fact that Blues have been in this position so many times that the fans are numb to the pain of it now. They just kind of understand that this is the way Birmingham City does things. They get to the final day and there's a 1 game shootout to stay in the league, because it's been like this for the last 7 or 8 years now, hasn't it? Apart from maybe one or 2 seasons. And I think nobody was confident going into those 2 away games against Huddersfield and Rotherham, but they are massively confident going into this one. And I sort of feel the same. I feel like this team really thrives with St Andrews behind it. And that's probably wrong. They shouldn't really have to rely on, having that supporter base so much. They should be able to perform away from home as well. But I do feel like they are going to turn up on Saturday. They have to, really. So I can't say I'm confident. I'm hopeful. I think that's kind of what I've been saying all week. One being not very confident and 10 being very confident, I'd probably put myself at about a 6 or a 7.
Right.
Because
okay.
I do just to back that up. I do feel that if Blues win, they will stay up. I don't think they'll win and go down.
Yeah, you are. Yes, I agree. So I'm going to give 2 answers here. The first part of the answer is, how confident am I that Blues win? I think a 7, to be fair. Yeah, I think that's right. I think for all the reasons you outlined there, the experience, the home crowd, the absolute desperation of the situation, I think we will see a Blues side. And we talked about a Blues side that is on the front foot, and we've talked about how frail they've been mentally, but if they can at least look back at that Coventry game and say, "Here, lads, if we can make a good start, this is what we can do." So yeah, it is for me a winnable game, and desperation is the mother of invention in this situation. I know that's not the quote, but necessity is the mother of invention. So I think they will. I think they will win this game. This next part, which I'm actually surprisingly confident about this as well. I don't see Plymouth, Sheffield Wednesday, and Blackburn all getting the results they need. So the door is open as far as I can see. And when I initially read this question, I thought, well, I'm not going to get much beyond a 2 or a 3. But now I'm actually talking myself in. I can see Plymouth beating Hull, but I don't think it's a given. I could see a draw there quite easily. I do see Sheffield Wednesday winning at Sunderland. Certainly not losing. I think they'll get the point they need. And the Leicester Blackburn one's so interesting for me because the Blackburn players, you don't have to go too far on social. The Leicester players, you don't have to go too far on social media to see that they've been having a very nice week after they won the title. So is that going to impact what they do on Saturday against Blackburn, or is they going to be so motivated to get to 100 points? And some of these players who will probably get some fringe players on the side in the team, are they going to want to go in a positive way and say potentially goodbye to the King Power if at the end of contracts? I can see Leicester beating Blackburn. I really can. So therefore, the door is open. The door is still, it's not just ajar, it is open. But the first bit, everything melts away if Blues don't win on Saturday.
It does, and that's the important thing. Blackburn are a team I've looked at for weeks and thought with their fixture list that they're in real danger. And, if you take that that's a big surprising win at Leeds United out of the equation, they are in massive trouble.
Yeah, and I think if you just try and get inside John Eustace's head, he's going to Leicester potentially with a touchline ban, needing a point. I mean, the guy's brain must be frying. It really must. It's such an interesting narrative. It really is. Not to be trite about the fact Blues are about to get relegated, but just from a sporting narrative and storyline point of view, it's absolutely. The pot's bubbling over, isn't it? Oh,
it's remarkable that Blues have effectively put themselves in this position by sacking John Eustace in the first place, and the ridiculous irony is that they could actually save themselves by sending John Eustace's Blackburn Rovers down. It's genuinely a crazy storyline. The one thing that fills me with confidence about Leicester is that they are going to be in front of Pat's House at the King Power. As you say, they want to get to 100 points. They're going to be playing with freedom. They've clearly been enjoying themselves this week, hopefully not too much. And we know firsthand how strong that Leicester City bench is because a lot of those players played in that cup game against Blues in the second half. They blew Blues away.
But similarly, Blues cut them to ribbons in the first half, that second team. They could have been 3-0 up at half-time.
They did, but we'll forget about that for the purpose of this podcast, Brian.
Okay. All right, let's move on. Some really interesting questions. Alex Hands, trying to be positive in the event of the worst on Saturday. Should we go down? Can we build a cohesive team with little egos that as individuals aren't standouts, but as a team are one of the best? And then he cites Ipswich for that. And then he says a take there. We have to bounce back first season and look for back-to-back. I do think there's something to the momentum of consecutive promotions. We saw Southampton do it quite a few years ago, and I'm sure they're not the only team that's gone League One, Championship, Premier League. Interesting. What was the question again? Should we go down? Can we build a cohesive team with small egos? the individuals aren't standouts, but are one team. It's all about building the team that is greater than the sum of its parts. And I think for me, that's been the massive frustration this season, is that you've looked at the recruitment and you thought, yeah, good player, can see that. You know, we're not going to stray into Emmanuel Ivu and Ollie Berg necessarily, but guys like Laird and Bielik and Peck and Miyoshi, you'd say they're really interesting signings. But the sum of the parts hasn't been there, and that's been the frustrating thing. Alex, implicit in Alex's question is that the summer recruitment is absolutely huge, isn't it?
Yeah.
Whatever happens.
I mean, you know, it's all about cohesion, isn't it? And we looked at last summer's recruitment and thought, oh, that, like you just said, you know, that's a good signing. That's a good signing. Yeah, less so about Oliver Burke and Emmanuel Ivu, but the rest of them, you know, very solid signings. The ones that happened early in the window, in particular. John Eustace knitted it all together quite well and created a cohesive team, and that's what we must look at here. You know,
fair point. Yeah.
The rest of the managers have struggled to kind of get a tune out of the squad, but Eustace managed to do it quite well. He created a system that worked. You know, a lot of it's on the coach as well. You know, Blues have got good players. We know this. It's a as you say, a team that's not the sum of its parts. It doesn't perform like a team that's got that much quality. And I think Ipswich are a great example because they've come up with a team that's obviously had a little bit of time to settle in League One, done very well in League One, and they've just taken the league by storm because of a system that every single player is drilled in.
Yeah, let's not overplay. Let's not paint them as cutesy little Ipswich. You know, that have put a squad together on a bale of hay and a tractor wheel. They've paid good money for some of those players. You know, bringing in someone like Kiefer Moore in January. Yeah. You know that suggests that they are paying decent wages.
I think, but they could afford to take that risk in January, couldn't they, Brian? When they were in that position, they had to go big and keep up the pace. They basically went for that kind of, we get promotion or we struggle a little bit. You know, the Blues, Nottingham Forest, Aston Villa all went for back in the day, didn't they? They kind of probably overspent at that point to gamble to reach the Premier League, and, you know, it looks like it's going to pay off. Interestingly, on the Ipswich point, I've actually been speaking to someone recently at the club, and they kind of, you know, if the worst case scenario comes, they highlighted Ipswich as kind of a role, a model to basically try and implement if they were to go down, kind of that getting a cohesive group of players and working with them for a period of time. And hopefully, you know, you can do in Ipswich. There's no given. Not many teams, you know, go down to League One and get back-to-back promotions or even come back up and compete in the higher upper echelons of the Championship. I think Wolves did it. They got promoted straight away. And then I think they did compete first season. They finished 7th or 8th, didn't they? Just missed out on the playoffs.
The Kenny Jackett side.
Yeah. So
they were good. Yeah,
they're the best example if you want to obviously get that instant promotion back to the Championship. But
did Leicester do it as well?
No. Southampton did.
Yeah, Southampton.
But yeah, you know, with the egos comment, I don't actually, having spoken to a lot of these players over the course of the season multiple times, I don't think there are that many big egos in the squad. It's not that kind of, it's not, I wouldn't say it's a bad dressing room. Do you know what I mean? I think there are probably personalities that were strong at the start of the season, big personalities that were kind of key at the start of the season that have kind of diminished over the course of the season. You know, someone like Dion Sanderson's a great example. I think he was doing an exceptional job at the start of the season, and I think John Eustace somebody who had brought him in, made him captain, really, really unsettled him, and he wasn't able to continue that form under Wayne Rooney and so forth. But I don't think there are bad characters in that dressing room. I think the majority of them are actually, you know, decent characters. I think they've just been, you know, probably blindsided by what happened, and then it's just been a real downhill struggle from there, and they've not been able to play in the same manner they did at the start of the season. For me, I don't want to go into all ground, but it probably does all go back to that decision in October. We're going to probably have a massive debrief after this season where we'll talk about that more in depth. But I would say I don't think there's a massive group of egos in that changing room. I know a lot of the players, particularly the ones out of contract, aren't well liked by fans at the moment, and you know, fans will probably be glad to see the back of them and some of the others. But from my experience, they've not been a bad bunch to deal with.
Yeah, I think what happens is losing. If there are cracks there's no cracks when everyone's winning, are there? Because no one's got any room to say anything because the team's performing well. And I bet there weren't too many complaints in October, when the team's performing okay, and then everyone's got an opinion when it starts to not work as well, haven't they? Jay Firth, what you've kind of referred to this earlier, Alex. What's the realistic recruitment budget if we get relegated to League One? Now, we're not going to be able to give you a figure, obviously, but you think it's going to be relatively to third tier standards decent, don't you, Alex?
If they're in League One, I'm confident from speaking to people that it's going to be a promotion competing budget. It's going to be top end League One. They think they'll be competitive in the Championship if they can stay in it this season. Obviously, that's going to be a huge turnaround in the summer in terms of players. But if it's in League One, it's going to be top end, if not top. You look at the teams going down, Huddersfield, who are also bankrolled by an American, I believe, now. They'll probably be top end League One as well. Wrexham going up to League One from League Two. We know they've got money and have probably already got a very high quality squad given the league they've been in. But Blues will be top end if they're in League One.
Would you rather have Tom Brady or Ryan Reynolds?
I think Ryan Reynolds is definitely more active, isn't he? He's very much hands on there. I don't think Tom Brady's anywhere near that level of Blues.
Yeah, indeed. But what can Ryan Reynolds say from a nutrition point of view? Right, I've been slightly facetious there. I'm conscious of the fact that we're running long here now. Matty Davis says, given the talk of the big budget, regardless of division, do you think it's realistic to expect us to bounce straight back up if we go down? The club hasn't had a great season in over a decade. Is it really that easy just to switch into a winning mentality, even with new players? So the bounce back up, is the immediate return realistic, do you think, Alex?
It has to be, doesn't it? I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't be. Wolves are a great example. Wolves team that got relegated in, was it 2013, I think, from the Championship? They'd obviously had back-to-back relegations to the Premier League. Kenny Jackett took over. There were a couple of players that were perceived to be bad eggs in that squad. He marginalised them and cast them aside and didn't use them, told them they wouldn't play for him. And there were even a couple of players who had just been kind of involved in the back-to-back relegations, heavily involved, and obviously in Kenny Jackett's eyes, damaged by that, and he marginalised them as well. They weren't necessarily bad characters or whatever, but he marginalised them and cast them to the side. So it takes a manager, I suppose, an experienced manager, to make those ruthless decisions. There are going to be players at Blues that have been scarred by the last few years, in the constant relegation battles that maybe a new manager won't want around when he arrives in the summer, or if they do get a new manager, when Mowbray potentially comes back or whatever. So up in the air. But yeah, it's something that whoever the manager is has got to have kind of the I suppose the experience and knowledge to deal with. It's going to be a difficult situation because you've got 8 players out of contract, but you've also got a lot of players under contract, a lot of players who were signed last summer on 3 and 4 year contracts that whoever the manager is may not want. It's going to be a massive summer, but whatever squad Blues do build, you would expect it to be at the top end of League One.
Yeah, indeed. And you made reference to that Wolves side without going over old ground again. But Kenny Jackett came in with a blueprint and made a couple of interesting signings, like guys like Kevin McDonald, who would become really instrumental and proper leaders in that Blues team, in that Wolves team, which ended up functioning like a machine in that League One season. They just rolled over everybody. And I think if it is Tony Mowbray that's the manager, he will certainly have an idea of how he wants the machine to look and the cogs that he'll want in them. So I don't think that's certainly got to be the expectation, Matty. Definitely, as regards to just switching into the winning mentality, I think it can be done if the right leaders are brought into the club or emerge from within the dressing room, because momentum is built by wins. So yeah, interesting. Yeah.
To add to that point, Brian, you are going to need some really strong personalities and strong leaders, because if Blues go down to League One, sell out all these kind of League One grounds next season in terms of away followings, they're going to be everybody's cup final. I've watched games in League One in the past where there's been Leeds United, Sunderland, Sheffield Wednesday, big clubs with big followings, and they go to places like, I don't know, Cambridge or whatever, smaller clubs, and they are, they're their cup final for the season. They're the game they all look forward to because they want to play against the better players and bigger teams. And Blues are going to face that every single week, and I don't think it's going to be a particularly nice thing. But they need players who can handle that if they do end up in League One.
But they absolutely do. And the clubs you've just mentioned there, Leeds United and Sunderland, they did not come back at the first go. In fact, it took them 2 or 3, 4 goes, I think, in the case of Sunderland. So yes, we're saying it is realistic to expect Blues to challenge for an automatic return. It's certainly not a given, but we've got months to talk about that. Alex, this is an interesting one. Alex Oakes, do you think that if we drop, some of the players that we have out of contract will be offered new contracts, or is it just a complete clean shop? That's an interesting. I've been pondering this one, and people listening to this would think potentially Lukas Djukovic is my love child, and he's not. But is there a role for a Lukas Djukovic in League One next season?
I think there 100% is, if he's on the right contract, and I think Lukas Djukovic probably understands now that he's not going to play every game. He's going to be kind of a bit part player if he stays at Blues, for next season. I would look at 3. I'd look at Lukas Djukovic. I'd look at Mark Roberts. I know a lot of fans won't like me for saying that, but I think Mark Roberts would be valuable in League One. I think he'd be a top-end League One defender, provided I could get him on the right terms. And I'd probably look at Keshi Anderson as well if Blues are in League One. I don't know whether he'd want to drop into League One because he didn't want to drop into League One last year when Blackpool got relegated. But given the number of games he's played this season and the fact he's had back-to-back relegations with Blackpool and Blues, if Blues do go down, I think he would be an asset in League One. And I don't think he's above Blues in League One. I think that's probably about his level, high in League One, low in Championship. So I think there's a shout for him as well. They're the 3 I'd look at. The rest of them, unless you tell me a name that I've forgotten, I don't think I'd be interested in keeping any of the others in League One.
Ruddy is the other one, potentially.
Not in League One, though, for me.
No, okay. Question from Tony Hawes. Will the 2 Toms be there on Saturday? I understand that Tom Wagner will be, I think.
I'd be stunned if Tom Wagner wasn't there, but I wouldn't expect Tom Brady to be there. He hasn't been there since Rotherham at home. I mean, I wouldn't come back after that, to be fair, that 0-0 at home to Rotherham. If I was him, I've probably got better things to do than watch a game that poor. God. But yeah, Tom Wagner, you'd expect him to be there, revving up the crowd, wouldn't you?
You would, indeed. Jim Dean Ash, why has JJ been bombed out of the team? In a squad that doesn't score many goals, it seems strange that one of our biggest creators isn't playing in these crucial games. Thoughts on that, Alex?
Is he one of the biggest creators?
Yeah, that's where I was going with that. Interesting you say that. He's the type of player, a lot of his goals have come from him arriving later into the box rather than instigating something.
Yeah.
But if we take the point about him almost being one of the leading goal scorers.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that is a... Blues haven't... I think they went to Rotherham and played a team that, apart from Stansfield, had 2 goals in its starting 11 or something like that. Jordan James, Koji Miyoshi, Siriki Dembele, Junior Bakuna have all scored, a decent number of goals this season. JJ, 8 goals from midfield. The majority of those have come since, obviously, John Eustace left in October. He's probably been the one player during that Rooney time that did thrive. I think it probably goes back to the trust thing with Rowett. He's obviously kind of got a group of players together that he does trust. His midfield has been Ivan Sunjic and Peck, and I think Rowett's kind of been clinging onto that Coventry game and trying to keep a little bit of consistency since then, which is why Peck and Sunjic have played in midfield. If James is to play, I want him in midfield. I don't want him wide left anymore. I don't want him I don't want him even as the 10. I think he was really wasted wide left, and it upset his rhythm this season. I think that did. I think he could have been kept in midfield at a time where, Blues were trying to transition the playing style on Tony Mowbray. I think Jordan James and Sung Ho Peck are a better midfield pairing for me than Peck and Demel, Demel has completely faded, hasn't he? So I'm not massively surprised Rat hasn't looked at James a lot because he's clearly started on Sunjic and Peck. I know he likes Peck a lot. Whether he'll play him on Saturday, I don't know. But I'm not massively surprised JJ has been left out. With regards to the creativity, I think that's probably one part of his game that I don't think he's as good as players like Bakuna or even Peck in terms of the way he kind of plays through teams. His great skill for me, as you mentioned earlier, is goal scoring, arriving late, almost in a Frank Lampard way, in the way that he times those runs into the box. And his finishing, he is an excellent finisher. We've been talking about that for a couple of years. But yeah, I'd probably be surprised if JJ started against Norwich, to be honest.
You would or you wouldn't?
I would, yeah, because he didn't get off the bench against Huddersfield. So when Rout's only picking, a group of 15 or 16 players to start games, and JJ has been one of those, but when he's not picked him at all to come off the bench against Huddersfield, I'd be surprised if he then was moved so far away from that and said, yes, you're going to start this game against Norwich.
Yeah. Finally, from Kieran, do you think we'll start to see a specific recruitment style in terms of club ideology and tactics? And he cites Brentford and Brighton, clubs where, regardless whoever the manager is, they all seem to play a specific way. I mean, that is the absolute ideal, isn't it? You don't have to be in League One to do that, I don't think. That requires. I think what's characterised the recruitment over the last few seasons, maybe not so much this season, but it's previous seasons to that, it's been using the loan market to paper over the gaps in the squad because of the budget situation and because they've been so hamstrung by huge contracts given out by the previous owners. This season, I have to admit, I expected better from this body of recruitment. As we said earlier, I think most of them that came in, you thought, yeah, okay, if we get the best, then that's a good signing. Too often, the best hasn't been forthcoming, whether that's through injury or selection or form or something like that. But absolutely, the dream scenario is you want someone with a whole club vision, even down to the under 18s or into the academy. Into the foundation stage of the academy. This is the way we want to breed our players, and this is the way a Birmingham City side is going to play, whatever their age, right from PDL up to the Championship. I mean that has to be the goal, doesn't it? And hopefully with the stability off the pitch now, that can be implemented more, and the firefight of previous seasons, I suppose, is what I'm trying to get at, is now over. Hopefully, the papering over cracks.
I think that is the dream, isn't it? The Brentford, the Brighton model. It's probably a model that doesn't incorporate a manager. Incorporates a head coach, doesn't it? And a technical director or a sporting director who really pulls the strings and controls everything and knits it all together. The head coach is again, he's just one of the guys who's in line with the others, isn't he? And coaches the first team. I think Blues are making efforts to align everything, in that the appointment of Mike Rigg, for example, as technical director of the academy, it's a slightly different role, one that we probably haven't seen an awful lot of in English football, to have a technical director of an academy. But it's so he can oversee recruitment and things on that side and work in with the recruitment team, obviously Craig Gardner, Joe Carnell and Frank McParland, who those three effectively did it all last summer on their own, didn't they? Big clubs in the Championship probably have a lot more than three people doing their recruiting. So you would like to think that a year into United's operation, and we can effectively it was difficult for them to have a massive say last summer because obviously they arrived midway through it. But a year into their operation, you would like to think there's going to be a far more joined up recruitment process. I think Miyoshi and Peck, I think they've been two of the more successful signings. Miyoshi especially, I think he's had a fantastic first season. When you look at the numbers and the way he's played, I know he could still end up being in a side that's relegated from the Championship, but I think he's got probably 12 plus goal contributions now in terms of goals and assists. I think that's very good, for a player who's not started that many games away from St Andrews either. I think that's really good for a first season in English football. Peck as well. I know we've had our differences on him, but I think technically he's the most talented Blues player. I think he's the most complete midfielder they've got. I think he'll be an absolute asset if the club stays in the Championship and builds in the right way around him. I don't think he'll go down to League One. I've said that before. But I think those two players, particularly the Asian market, I think it's stronger than ever. And I do think Blues need to look over there more, especially if we're talking, from a completely, irrelevant footballing view now. If we're looking at, the social media impressions the club is working on now, and, we know now that makes the club a lot of money through the deal they struck with United. Having players like Beck from South Korea and Miyoshi from Japan would work wonders for that. So I fully expect them to kind of constantly explore this market and see if they can pick up more gems, whether they're in League One or the Championship, because there are going to be Japanese players, there are going to be South Koreans who would happily come to England and play in League One to launch their careers.
Yeah, indeed. There's so much to talk about recruitment there. There's 2 or 3 questions which I did put on here that we haven't addressed, and I think it'd be wrong of us just to try and shoehorn them in now into the last sort of 30 seconds. Josh Clark has asked if, when we do go down, who'd be your number 1 target to sign in League One? That's a great question, Josh. I think we'll come to that in a future podcast if that's okay. John Ramsey, I just wanted to acknowledge the fact John had asked this. I don't know that either of us have got an answer though. Do you think Moby will return if Blues are relegated? Would you want to be a manager in League One? Again, can we cross that bridge when we get to it, John? Not ducking that issue, because it is a very genuine talking point. But I think rather than shoehorning it into the end of this pod, we'll maybe devote more time to it in a future one. Alex, are we good?
I think we are, yeah. Well, as good as we can be, yeah. Yeah,
indeed. So thank you all for listening. As ever, once again, if you've made it this far into a nearly an hour-long podcast, we appreciate your interest and your perseverance. We'll no doubt see many of you at St Andrews on Saturday, and it really is a keep right on from both of us. This in our final podcast of this championship season.